Hello, welcome to Salisbury Cathedral's reflection for today, the 14th of October. I shall just silence my computer. I'm Robert Titley, the Canon Treasurer. Well, if you've paid any attention to the news today, you'll know that Northern Ireland is beginning a limited lockdown. You'll know that Wales is banning travellers from some UK COVID hotspots. You'll know that President Trump is back on the campaign trail. So much to talk about then. So what shall we talk about? Something you may have missed in the news, which is that Salisbury now has its own bespoke Monopoly board. Salisbury Monopoly went on sale from I think 10 o'clock this morning. You can buy it in all good games and toy outlets in this city and no doubt elsewhere too. Monopoly, it's a game about getting rich. But it's a game about getting rich not by inventing something or by providing a service that's really good. It's a game about getting rich through acquiring property and developing it and driving others into bankruptcy. And when the game really began to take off in the 1930s, gosh, that would have rung some bells because the world was then in an economic crisis and loss of jobs, loss of livelihoods, bankruptcies were everywhere. So there would have been a certain resonance for people gathering around the Monopoly board when it first came out. Well, here we are in another economic crisis, and we now here in Salisbury have our very own version of this game. But it's a version with a pretty light touch. The makers describe it as a love letter to Salisbury. As you move around the board, you will be introduced to streets and sights from our fair city. If you turn up the cards in the community chest, they will introduce you to excellent Salisbury charities. One card in the chance pile involves an accident with a cup of coffee involving Magna Carta. Go to jail. And where is Mayfair? What part of Salisbury is given the accolade of appearing on the highest value square on the Monopoly board? Well, the makers have chosen us, Salisbury Cathedral. Now, I've thought about the significance of this, and it really does rather tickle me that that square on the Monopoly board, that pinnacle of rentier capitalism, is occupied by a place that cannot be bought or sold. A place to which, indeed, if you've booked a place at evening prayer, just about 27 minutes from now, it's a place that you can go and say your prayers in for free. Now, if you make it to evening prayer today, or perhaps to choral evensong on one of the other days of the week, do please come if you can. You will be introduced to a particular part of Luke's Gospel, which forms part of the service every time we do evensong. It's a song called the Magnificat, and according to Luke's Gospel, it is the song that the Virgin Mary sings when she has received the news of the coming birth of Jesus. And the Magnificat is rather an anti-monopoly text. It includes this verse: "He hath put down the mighty from their seat, and hath exalted the humble and meek." In monopoly terms, he hath fixed up the hungry in Mayfair, while the rich he hath sent down the Old Kent Road. Except that the Old Kent Road, the lowest value square on the traditional monopoly board, is actually a great place to live. Nor is it a place where it's all that cheap to rent or buy property. Don't take my word for it. Talk to my colleague Anna, our presenter, who before arriving at the cathedral has spent some very fruitful and happy years as a vicar whose parish was in that very place, the Old Kent Road. Now, Mayfair as a church, that really has turned my mind over. And a lot of churning of the mind is happening all across our planet at the moment. As we've coped with lockdown, many of us have lived through furlough. As the virus is taking its toll both of lives and of livelihoods, a lot of people are thinking perhaps for the first time, or thinking afresh about what the point of it all is. What is the game that we're playing? What matters most? What's the most precious square on the board? What is Mayfair for me? Well, if you ask yourself that question, you might, if you're really honest, come to a rather Monopoly type answer. For me, Mayfair, the most precious thing in life, is about success and winning. Financially, certainly, but not just as a matter of money. What counts for me is winning, beating the opposition. For me, Mayfair is victory. Or you may take a less combative approach to material success. You may say, no, I don't mind how well other people do, as long as I do well enough myself. For me, Mayfair is about prosperity. It's about quality of life. The pinnacle of achievement might be retiring to France, perhaps, though proceed with caution there just at the moment, or possibly retiring to Salisbury. And if you work your way around the Salisbury Monopoly board, you'll see many tempting places where you might like to spend the next phase of your life. Or it may be that Mayfair for you is something more modest, not victory or security, but just or prosperity, but just a measure of security, being able to live out your days as far as possible without material distress. Or it may be that for you, the Monopoly board is actually just one part of a much bigger board, part of a bigger game, the game of life. And success in that game is about things that are less tangible, things that money can't buy. For you, then, Mayfair might be represented by good friends, or by achieving integrity, being or becoming the kind of person you can bear to confront in the mirror morning by morning. Well, what's Mayfair for you? What's Mayfair for me? You and I will have our lists of things that really matter, what we feel the game is really about. And I suspect the list of the believer and the list of the atheist might overlap quite a lot. But here's a question that really will sort us out. Do you believe that the game of life is itself part of a yet bigger game? Some years ago, I heard the late Lionel Blue, the Liberal rabbi, in a radio programme talking about a funeral he'd taken, and it was the funeral of someone who had really done very well in Monopoly board terms. In his sermon, Rabbi Blue talked about heaven. But afterwards, one of the mourners said to him about the person who died, "He wouldn't want your heaven, Rabbi. I don't think he'd know what to do with it. So much of him was bound up with this world, I doubt there's much left for the next." And that next world that the mourner spoke about at that funeral, that is the world which is the game that's played on the biggest board of all. It's the arena of eternal life, life with God. It's the biggest game of all that Jesus talks about when, in another part of Luke's Gospel, he addresses those people who have found themselves shut out or disadvantaged or rubbished because they're his followers, because they strive to live in the way that he lives. And he offers to them something which you find on no square of any game board. He says to them, "Surely your reward is great in heaven." a prayer to end, as we generally do end these reflections. It comes from the very first page of St. Augustine's Confessions. It's a prayer which, according to one writer, he takes the fundamental claim of Christianity about the human race, which is that we are made for God, and he uses it to explain a fundamental fact of human experience, that our hearts are not at peace. Augustine opens his confessions, or almost opens them, with these words addressed to God. Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. Thank you very much for the time we've spent together, and may God be with you.